So I've noticed that using this recording system has produced a delay between my speaking and the sound of my words. For some reason, I don't know why that happens, but it has. And so I'll try and do it with the camera, with the reverse camera, isn't it? The rear camera. So it doesn't matter that the words are out of sync. So speaking of videos that are out of sequence, the video where I said the unmentionable or the unmentionables is before the video where I say, which is called the true unmentionables or the real unmentionables. I forget the title. That would be the second in this two-part series, and then the other one that I did, which concerns the nature of women, would be the first video in a series of two, and the second one would be what about Esther? Because after I made that first video, I started to consider Esther and her condition, and I realized I needed to add to it to allow for Esther, as it were. It's the Bible, and so it has to be taken into account. When you think about it, the book of Esther, the relationship between Esther and King Artaxerxes, or Ahasuerus, as it's written in the authorized version, I believe it's the same man. He would have been probably the greatest king in the world at the time. His kingdom stretched across many nations. I don't know how many millions of people, but he was the big guy, and it's quite a romantic story. I think you'd have to call it a love affair with Esther. He chose her, and Esther was an Israelite, an Israelitish woman, and this is the reason for the story, of course. And so as an Israelitish woman, because of what I believe and what other people do believe, that the Israelites are, they are our ancestors. And so Israelitish women would have been greatly favored in the world because of their beauty. So Esther could have been a blonde-haired woman with pale skin and blue eyes, or a red-haired woman with green eyes, freckled skin, or any of the many, many different traits of beauty that exist among our people. And so it's hardly surprising that such a great king would nonetheless choose Esther to be his queen, because of her beauty and her charm. And then the relationship was cemented when she saved his life effectively because of her revelation, and she changed the course of history because she avoided a genocide of our ancestors by risking her own life, because to speak to the king was a hazardous matter. It was so different in those days, wasn't it? Imagine Esther asking King Ahasuerus where he was last night because he hadn't turned up. Such things are unthinkable. She had no authority at all to inquire about such matters, although she was the queen, and it was none of her business. to look into his affairs, and that's why the scepter had to be stretched out, that an exception would be made because he favored her, and she was allowed to speak about something, to spontaneously introduce a topic, and to inform the king. And so the usual hazards of being informed by a woman were suspended, shall we say, in the king's mind as he listened to what she had to say. It's a wonderful story. Another woman, of course, whose message was important is Abigail, and her husband wouldn't listen. The Bible doesn't record that she tried to alert him, but I think she'd already realized that it was pointless because the man was adult. I think his name, I get it mixed up with the guy who had a vineyard, and I'm going to say Naboth, but it wasn't Naboth, was it? What was his name now? Esther's husband. Nabal, I think. And I did hear somebody say that the word can be interpreted as meaning the fool. It seems unlikely that his mum would have christened him the fool, but it's interesting that the name has that meaning also. And the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Remembering in making that quotation that there is, the words there is are in italics in our Bible. So what is recorded is the fool hath said no God in his heart, no God, which can also mean a refusal, a rejection of godly instruction, rather than being akin to a modern day atheism. I mean, it's the same ultimate effect, of course, because you turn your back. You don't listen to the words of God. But so it is, the book of Esther, and the story of Abigail, which I think is in 2 Kings, but I'm slightly guessing now. God bless this morning.